Hello, hola, hola, amigas, amigos, but today, especially amigas from all over the world. Today is International Women's Day, and in this very special occasion, I have prepared an event dedicated to women, the historic women of my land, my country, Peru. And I would like to take them as an example of the evolution of the role of women in our society, struggling most of the times to be able to do what they wanted to do, but make them happy also. But, in epochs in which women were not allowed to be happy sometimes. Oh, they were supposed to please other men. They were supposed to please their relatives, but not pleasing themselves. So how distant that time is to the time we are living now. I'm so happy, first of all, to be a woman, to be mother of three girls, three future, adult women who will themselves also be able to change the world. So I think everyone is able to change the future, not just through what you do, also through raising a family, or your kids, or your nephews, or people who are close to you. You can influence everybody, and also be able to change the future like that. So, well, thanks a lot for having me today. Thank you so much for coming today in a day where there are so many wonderful tools happening here on our beloved platform, Heygo. It means a lot to me, as you always know. So let me say first hi to all the people joining. And well, of course, once again, happy Women's Day. Happy Dia de las Mujeres. Happy day of all women around the world. So let me say hi to all my friends. Hola, Diane. Hola, Melanie. Thanks for coming. Hola, Silke. Thanks for visiting me. Marlene, Spirit, SK, Priscilla. Hola, Karin. Thanks for visiting me again. Gracias, querida. Caroline, Violet. Hola, hola. Brenda, Brian. Thanks a lot for coming. Priscilla. Hola, hola. And thanks also for the follows, Silke. It really means a lot to me. Thanks for following my Hego channel. Hola, Violeta, Violet. Thanks for the message. Hola, Sheila, Ellen. So, well, I think we are ready to begin this event. Not before, of course, thanking you for your support. It could be through, commenting at the end of this event, maybe supporting your Lima City tour guide with a tip if it's something you are able to do. Thanks a lot, because when you support with a tip to a guide or content creator in Hego, you are also supporting Hego at the same time. This is, as you know, a free platform, and the only way we can sustain this platform and their content creators is through a tip, or maybe you can become a sponsor. The sponsorship program is a system that helps all content creators and guys also that are part of this platform to continue creating events every month. So if you want to know more about the this sponsorship program, well, at the end, I'm going to be commenting more about it. So I think it is time to begin. I will turn off the light here so we can also see better the screen in front. And well, I have chosen today a series of images that will take us back to different periods of the history of Peru, and also a land that you know already is associated still with machismo, or that is struggling related with, like the subjection to women, of women to men, men as the pillar of the society, the one who takes decisions. So we're going to see when this idea of machismo started in this part of the world, and also how was the role of women, or how women were seen in the ancient times before the conquest of the Spanish, the European, let's say, taking of this territory, and the inclusion of different ideas and religions from the ones we had here, our indigenous people had here. So that process of transformation that happened in the year 1532 for Peru. So we're going to see first how was the role of women back in the pre-Hispanic times. So first of all, we have to understand that the way how women were seen in the pre-Hispanic times was very different from, let's say, the idea of how the ancient religion of this part of the world valued the female spirit, the idea of the world being divided equally, in a female side and a male side. And this is just something understandable because the ancient societies of Peru were agricultural societies. So when you are a person that depends on agriculture or depends on the raising of animals for sustaining your family, your economy, you need and you value the multiplication, right? So the ancient societies of Peru, first of all, believed that they were the product of the perfect union of a male and female force. You can call it sun and moon. You can call it, day and night. You can call it up and down, the up world, the upper world, and the underworld. You can call it male, female, right? So, but we have also another important idea. Thank you, Caroline. Thanks for your support, amiga. Gracias. The idea of the call to the fertility immediately connects us to the idea of worshiping the femininity, this idea of Pachamama, Mother Earth. And Mother Earth is related also with the underworld, a world of darkness, a world of humidity, a world where the crops grow, the potatoes grow, right? So many different products come from underground, right? So this idea of a female goddess that is giver of products, right? Very powerful. We know also that in the ancient times, men and women were able to rule. Unfortunately, we don't have enough information, documentation that can say for sure if they were equally able to govern in the territory of Peru before the Spaniards, because we don't have really too many, documented information besides the one the conquistadors were able to give us. But also remember that the Incas, indeed, the Inca governors were predominantly oriented to more male government, right, than female government. Doesn't mean that women were not important, but men were generally the rulers, right? But there were other societies in the pre-Hispanic Peru that were conducted by women. We're going to see some cases here in a moment, right? Sexual freedom. It's very important to understand that, that concept of, like women being submitted to men, that men can have many women and women just can have one husband. If not, they're going to be, punished by the society. It is something that is not really that much connected with how women were in the pre-Hispanic times. First of all, we know that some ancient leaders, female leaders, practiced polyandry, which means that they had many husbands. Also, female leaders with many husbands, right? And this also we know from the conquistadors because they were able to meet one of these societies. We know also the case of the Servinacui. The Servinacui is something important and powerful, and it's a tradition that we still have nowadays in Peru, in the Andes in particular. This is the trial marriage. A trial marriage is a period of 3 to 6 months in which people, a couple that is in love can live together, right? Not marry yet. They can live together. They can try if they are, going to be a lasting couple. And if they are, not able to make it, these 6 months show them that they were not indicated one to another, they could finish that relation with no consequences, right? But if they were sure they wanted to keep forward, they could get married after that. Usually people ask me, what if, like there was a baby produced during that time? The baby will go to the mother, to the family of the mother, not to the father, right? So we're going to discuss this in a moment. Fidelity and monogamy were very, very prized in the common people, in the common society. So once you got married, you had to be with one person. Of course, if you were an Inca or a king, you didn't need to do that because the Inca was polygamous, okay? And was a man, by the way. Also, the idea of panaca, the family concept in the pre-Hispanic times was ruled by the idea of the center pillar was the woman, was the mother, because your panaca or your family was related with your mother. So your brothers, your siblings will be the ones that your mother gave you, not connected much with the father. So you will always go to the side or the tree of your mother. Right. And finally, last but not least, important before we go to the next images, I have many images to share with you. I started with a little, like formal introduction to give you an idea of some of the strong points related with the importance of women in the pre-Hispanic times. Well, basically, the virginity in the pre-Hispanic times that was not valued as in Europe, right? Women could actually have a active sex life without any consequences, without any, like prejudice before getting married. And this is very interesting because the Spanish were completely surprised by this. The idea was that if a woman, was not, like initiated, in a, let's say, sexual life, after a certain, age, of course, that was appropriate, like for long time, she didn't was able to engage in a relation like that. It meant that she was not capable to make her attractive to a man, right? So virginity and chastity was not considered something to be honored and prized, right? Things changed completely later after the coming of the Catholic religion. So basically, more than the coming of the conquistadors, it was the religion that said that this was not right. So we know that the value and the importance of women in the ancient times of Peru is, number one, her association with the domestication of plants, the agriculture, very important. But also, ancient women of Peru were since early associated with the religion, with the ruling and the controlling of the magical world that cannot be explained with bare eyes. Of course, you need, to even try or drink hallucinogenical plants to be able to see the gods, to be able to hear the gods, and to be able to understand the gods. Hola Marilu, amiga, thanks for coming. Gracias. Happy Women's Day, by the way. And to all the people that are joining, happy International Women's Day. We are revising together the importance and the evolution of the role of women in my country, in Peru. And we're going back to ancient times. For example, this case, which is very interesting, I decided to bring this example of a ruler because we think usually in women, as the ones that were associated, with the cooking or with the house or with the family in a more private, like stage or situation, no, more related with, the face that you don't see out, no, the face that you see usually is the one of the man, the leader, but not in Peru. The lady of Pacopampa, a woman that lived about 3,000 years ago, was a great example of women not just being rulers and religious leaders. This was an example of women who were born to rule. And how is that possible? Oh, thank you, Mary Lou. How is that possible? Let me tell you something. This situation of the lady of Pacopampa, the finding of her, but in particular, the shape of her head. Kari, have you noticed, my friend, the shape of this lady, the recreation of the head of the lady? Amigos, amigas, that is a pointy head, meaning that this person had a deformed skull, but she was not born with a deformed skull. She was given that deformation when she was a baby. In the pre-Hispanic Peru, the deformation of skulls was practiced since ancient times. For long, it was believed that just men receive the deformation of the skulls because it was seen generally in male context, in male burials, right? But this case was very, very strange, very unusual. A 3,000-year-old woman who ruled and had deformed, pointy head. So when she was a baby, her head was sort of like gently pressed little by little to change its shape to look pointy and long, like the shape of the mountains, possibly, right? Or the shape how the gods they believe had the heads. So indeed, Kari, she must have been very pretty, and probably imagine the facial painting, those beautiful earrings she was buried with. So very regal, as you can see. The deformation of the skulls, of course, was to distinguish these people, these leaders from others, as Carrie, our friend, is saying here in the comments. But there were also other ways to distinguish people, from the commons. It could be also by the use of nose rings, crowns, gold and silver, which, by the way, gold and silver were not considered a currency or that had a monetary value, not until the coming of the conquistadors. The silver was considered the tears of the moon in earth, and the gold the sweat of the sun in earth. So these elements that were produced by their gods, these heavenly gods, were in a way also, little fragments of themselves which were used in rituals, but they had no monetary value at all. So this case, the Lady of Cow, we're now talking about 1700 years ago, the north coast of Peru, a woman who was not just a powerful lady, leader, who died very young, probably when she was giving birth, right? She was pregnant when she died. And we know that because her body naturally mummified, and the evidences of a loose belly that was still not compressing after the, let's say, the delivery of a baby, because she died almost quite after she gave birth. That was let's say, a clear evidence of her situation, and the mortality rate of women back then also, when they were delivering babies. I have a question over here from Kari. Thanks for using the cue, by the way, Kari, at the beginning. This is a good way also for me to know when there's a question for me. So what is that on her mouth? Thanks for the question, Kari. What we are seeing there is a nose ring. The nose rings were used as a way to, first of all, differentiate the people, the common people, from the leaders. Also, probably it gave certain let's say, or change in a certain way the tone of the voice of the people, the leaders. So it was sort of like an special effects, let's say, element. And another thing, the fact that the nose ring, which sometimes was very, very big, covered the mouth, made or gave the appearance that these people that were using them were unhuman, were divine, because they had no mouth. Oh, because they made no gesticulations, right? So it was a way or an element used of differentiation, for differentiation, of the common people and the people who were leaders, right? But there were also earrings, which deformed the earlobes, and stretching the earlobes also was an act only the leaders did. The Spanish conquistadors saw men, indigenous men, with stretched earlobes. They called them orejones, the big ear men. So we know that in the pre-Hispanic times, men who were very important had big earrings, or wore big earrings, or had big earlobes. But for long it was believed that only the men used them. But now we know that women as well use stretch earlobes, right? And here I have a slide. It is in Spanish, but I will translate, of course. It is about a interesting story. Hola, Maha. Thanks for coming. Hola, hola, amigos who are joining. We are talking about the role of women in Peru. For most of you, Peru is a very distant land. I am from Peru, from Lima, the capital of this beautiful country. And we are seeing the different ways how women, used to be seen in this part of the world before the conquest, the European conquest. So also talking about the European conquest, I would like to say some words about the Capullana. So what is the Capullana? When the Spanish conquistadors started their expansion in this territory, you know that they had a complete different way of seeing women, right? Women was supposed to be more, let's say, obedient, and they were under the men, protected by the men. Men was the one who led, the one who had the last word. So it was something not very usual seeing female leaders. The Capullana was a leader the Spanish met in the north coast of Peru. That was actually the first example of a woman of Peru who was married to many men. Yes, she practiced the polyandria, which means, a woman being able to marry many men, right? All at the same time, right? So, well, the Spanish were very amazed about this. Actually, it was like a tradition in that community that all women who were the leaders marry several men and have children from all of those men. We know that this tradition of women being the leaders of a community, of that community in the north, continue until 1871. And we have some of the names of the leaders who were recorded being of that community, until the year 1871. A very interesting story, by the way. I would like to tell you something before we leave behind also this story. We know that when the Incas, the Inca culture and the Inca king, he was the ruler, the leader of that amazing indigenous empire of Peru. When the Inca wanted to create bonds and relations with the communities he was annexing to his empire, he used to solicit, marry the daughters of the leaders, right? Of the male leaders, right? So in that way, he will create connections with, that leader, becoming almost family, right? of course, the Inca had several wives, no, and hundreds of them, right? Hola, Marlene, thanks for joining. So, but when the Inca went to the Tayanes, by the way, the name of the culture was the Tayan culture, and he met the Capuyana, the leader, the female leader, he didn't know how to do, what to do in that case, because the Capuyana, was a woman, and women were not just married, to any other person out of their community, so he couldn't marry her, he couldn't, marry the sister or the daughter, so it was very complicated. They had to find out a different way in that situation, because women were the leaders. They were not secondary. So, muchas gracias, Marlene, querida. Thanks for your tip support. Oh, no worries, Marlene. And by the way, amigos, amigas, if you're new to my channel, I have a YouTube channel in which you can see all my events recorded from beginning to end. If you were not able to come to the previous ones, or maybe you make it to this one a little bit late, so you can see the whole event from beginning to end, after we finish this one. So I invite you also to visit my YouTube channel. And if you can, give me a follow there, because in that way, well, you help me to continue growing also YouTube. So, Juanita, we are going also to the end of the pre-Hispanic women, and we have to talk about the Momia Juanita, Juanita the mummy, a 15-year-old child who was sacrificed to the gods. So what can be more sublime, of course, than a sacrifice? Someone who is considered, let's say, valuable enough to be sacrificed to the gods, to change the mind of the gods, is someone very special. Oh, thank you, Silke. Thanks for your support. Muchas gracias. So here we have a recreation here on this side of the moment of the death of Juanita, and the mummy of Juanita discovered, some decades ago in Arequipa. It was an interesting travesty. I will not go in detail in this one, because I want to invite you also to my next event about human sacrifices in Peru. So please stay tuned. Check on my Hego channel, and there we're going to see all the story about the sacrifice of Juanita. But basically, what I want to tell you here is that women were rulers in Peru, but also women were sacrificed to the gods. And once again, we can see here that everywhere around the world, women, beautiful women, were sacrificed to the gods. So we're going now to briefly recapitulate about the Servinacoy. Remember, is the marriage trial of 3 to 6 months, in which men and women could, marry but not be married. Oh, sorry, I see that there are some questions. Just sorry if I was not able to address them. Oh yes, Marlene, my YouTube channel. Also, you can go to my profile, and there it is. Oh, Carrie is also. Thank you, Carrie, is sharing the link to my YouTube channel. Muchas gracias. Also is in my Hego channel. Muchas gracias. Thank you. So remember that this trial of a marriage was not seen as something bad. It was seen as something natural. You could try to start your life with someone, and maybe if it didn't work, it would be better that you try it, first, than later, be repented to that. So meaning that women also had the power of saying, no, I am not happy with that man. I don't like that man. That man is lazy. That man is not working enough. He's not, making me happy enough. So I don't want to continue with him. What a beautiful thing, being able to have that freedom of choosing, right? Well, this ended with the next let's say, period of our history, the colonial times. And here we are going to jump to a time in which not just the indigenous met the Spanish or the Europeans, we met Africans, we met later Asians. We were able to absorb cultures from all over the world, and we were able to create one new, unique society with elements from different parts of the world that were not supposed to be mixed because, unfortunately, I cannot say that this beautiful fusion was created in purpose in the beginning. And the historic documents say so, because initially indigenous was supposed to marry indigenous, white people, and African slaves. That is the paper, and that was the first intention, but it didn't work. So we can see here in this painting from Lima, the main square of Lima. I have taken you here in several occasions, in my tours, my tours on Hago. The main square, the cathedral is over here. But it is very interesting to see, a different time. This is the end of the 18th century. The beautiful women with veils, the traditional veiled women of Lima, Afro-Peruvian women, indigenous women, all together here. Let's say accomplishing different roles that the society also imposed them. So, we have to go to the beginning. In the colonial times, the first years after the conquest of this territory, the Spanish conquistadors were in a quest to change the religion of the indigenous. And of course, in a quest to change the culture and the traditions that were not seen with good eye by the church. The Servinacui, for example, the trial marriage. The idea, of the virginity or chastity not being, that much appreciated in the pre-Hispanic times. Now is very important, right? So women had to now live under different precepts. And indigenous women, especially the princesses, the sisters of the Inca, or the daughters of the Inca monarchy was falling, or was later being, like a puppet monarchy of the new actual rulers, the Spanish, right? So the only way to legitimize these conquistadors before the indigenous, who were not just seeing their leaders as, like governors, they were seeing their leaders as representatives of the gods, right? So this means that these people, were not really understanding much of the Spanish, like what they were trying to bring, but the only way they could accept them was by seeing them merit their indigenous leaders. So that's why Francisco Pizarro married the daughter of the last free Inca king or Inca governor, Atahualpa. This beautiful lady you see over here is Quispecisa. That is her indigenous name, which I like very much. But she also had another name, a Catholic name, Inés Huaylas. Well, I don't like to use much the Catholic name because she accepted Catholic religion, but she didn't really understand it. Catholic religion, it's much complex, understanding a religion like that one. And probably she preferred to be called Quispecisa, but her Catholic name was Inés Huaylas. So they had a relation more of, that benefited both of them, not really a love relation. And one of the reasons how we know that is because he was in his 50s and she was a 15-year-old girl. So very hard to imagine she fell in love for him or he for her, but they had children together. And this lady you see in the center, right, is Francisca Pizarro. She is the first mixed blood child, and actually the first female mixed blood child of Peru. We call this mixed blood child first generation mestizo or mestiza. So she was a mestiza. And she is a great example of how women were treated, after the Spanish came. Because, in the Inca times, Quispe Sisa, if she had a daughter, and the man, goes away, the daughter or the son will go or will belong to Quispe Sisa, right? Because she's the mother. Maybe you remember my explanation before. But what happened in this case? Well, in this case, it was not like that. When she was born, Francisca Pizarro was born, immediately of some, months after, Francisco Pizarro made the decision that she will be raised by a relative to Pizarro, or by the wife of one of his brothers, right? So meaning that Quispe Sisa, was stripped of her daughter, right? We have other cases of unions of princesses and also men of high status that we would call hidalgos that will have noble titles in Spain. In most of the cases, we know that there was no love involved in these marriages. It was just, like politics. But it was beneficial for both sides, indeed. But they are our parents. And not just them, not just those fusions, those unions, those maybe sometimes love stories. I can believe more the love stories in the people who were poor, like they had no benefit on uniting or marrying, the indigenous, like a princess, or a Spanish hidalgo, right? Those were really the cases of the love matches, right? But not just the indigenous and the Spanish had these love matches that were interracial. And we are not talking about, interracial marriages, of the 1940s or the 1950s. We're talking about the 16th century, the 17th century. Look how early we mixed in this part of the world. This is the union, represented union of an Spanish man and an African woman, probably a liberta. A liberta is a Spanish word referring to a woman who gained her freedom, because we had a large importation of African slaves, mainly from Angola in the colonial times, right? So the union of these couples could be an indigenous with a European or Spanish, a black with an Spanish, a black with an indigenous was cataloged. Something that now it would be terrible to do, of course. Now, sometimes when we are able to, understand our origins, like pointing out we are mestizo, for example, or we are mulatto, it makes sense. It is okay. It is beautiful. But the way how it was done back then, it was also to create a pyramid of different stratas, in which the tip of that pyramid was or belonged to the Europeans, to the Spanish, right? Below them, the criollos, the children of the Spanish born in America. So they were European blood, but they were born in America, and that's why they were inferior. And below them, the other groups. So the son or daughter of this mix of bloods will be called mulatto, right? And we had different types of names. The Spaniards were crazy about that. They love to classify people. The Spanish king asked also in one occasion paintings in which he would be able to see the different classifications. So these paintings were made for the king, and they were sent to Spain. So we have, for example, another case. We have an indigenous woman and a black man. The union of this couple will produce in Mexico a child that will be called lobo or wolf, and in Peru, sambo. Oh, so those will be equal type of, like words, but in different locations. And also a mestizo, a mixed blood with an indigenous, right? So we have all different kinds of situations, right? Understanding first that women, which were inferior to men. So if you had, for example, an African man and an African woman, which one had more value, the African man or the African woman? Probably you have already the answer, right? Maybe you're going to start commenting in a moment. You can think about it, right? So the person who worth the most, if you want to buy a slave in the market, will be the man, right? So women will be considered in value inferior to men. So, and we're jumping in another direction. We're jumping to the women in the monasteries. So it is a big, like theme, this one, of the women in the monasteries in the colonial times in Latin America, because the monasteries were full, were crowded of people. And in the case of the women, many of them went to the monasteries for the following reasons. Number one, they didn't want to get married. They didn't want to marry. Maybe because they were in love of someone that they knew they couldn't marry because their relatives will not allow that. Or maybe because they were afraid of dying in the childbirth, right? Which was very common. Or maybe because, no, they just want to serve God, right? But even in the monasteries, and here I have the image of Saint Rose of Lima, one of the most important Latin American saints. She was from Lima, by the way, from my city. Saint Rose of Lima, she decided not even living in a monastery. One of the reasons, because why would you not like to live in a monastery if you were a woman, or a convent, let's say, or a nunnery, as it will be called more properly in English, if you were a woman and you want to dress the habit, or the let's say, if you want to dress, the clothes of a nun. Well, because back in those days, many women that were in monasteries or in nunneries were really not saint women. They did actually things that probably were not seen so good, but they were put there because they were punished by their parents. They were they're forced to go to a convent. So they were not really being that saint, right? Even some of these women had their indigenous or African slaves inside to live with them, to cook for them, right? So they were living really in a golden cage, right? So we have all the cases of saints, and this one here is Saint Martin of Porres, the first Black saint of America. Also, just a little bit more of information about Saint Rose of Lima, if you would like to know more about her. So it's interesting to see that Saint Rose of Lima probably actually had a kind of a psychosis. No, she was maybe not mentally stable, like if she would be able to be probably visited by a psychologist of our time, of this time, maybe psychosis will be one of the things he will say about her. Of course, I'm not saying that she was not a true saint, because, well, people back in that time, they immediately called her saint even before she died, and she did also miracles. But the thing is that she rejected completely any man, and probably she was very afraid of men in general. So the way how she tried to stay away from men, and men not looking at her in a different way, in a sinful way, was to rubbing her face with chili. Like also she used a type of crown of thorns, of metallic thorns, until she started to bleed, and then it had to be taken out by force by her parents, that saw her like killing herself little by little. Of course, she did this as in the old days, people will use siliciums to get closer to God, to feel the pain of Jesus. But she was a very strong tempered woman because she pushed her parents to allow her to live with them, although they wanted her to marry because she was very pretty. And she was so pretty, that even in a reconstruction of her face, using her own skull that is still is actually in a monastery, so you can see it. The skull, you can see it in a monastery here in Lima. So using the skull and also the reconstruction used from the description of friends of her that saw her when she was alive, we know that she was a very, very beautiful woman with a very light hair, blonde almost, fair skin, very, very attractive. But she knew, or she was conscious of her own beauty, and she tried to do the best she could for avoiding people to look at her in that way, right? So anyways, here you can see that wonderful work of reconstruction done in recent times by a team of forensics that were able to give us back the face of Saint Rose of Lima. So she died at age 31 years old. This painting you see here shows another site in downtown Lima, in a place where nowadays is the Congress of the city and the country. These lots of people that are reunited in the market. We can see once again, the market is the heart of the cities. I always say that because there you can see the actual people of the place, the traditions, the culture, the way how they talk. People relax, the ways they are not really like posing. They are who they are in the markets. And you can see all kinds of different ethnicities and these pretty women that are over here, which we're going to start talking about. So I cannot, of course, like in an event of this kind without talking about the veiled women of Lima, the tapada limeña, which were an excellent example of the temper of women in my country and my city in particular. This tradition came from Spain, and that is because in Spain there was a long interaction and even presence of Moorish or Moors for about 800 years. So the Arab influence in Spain determined also cultural elements that the Spanish have until these days, in terms of architecture. Even the Spanish also has blended Arab words, right? So, and the fashion, right? So although the Spanish who came to this territory were Catholic, and the women who came to this territory were Catholic or they practiced Catholic religion, they use fashions which probably didn't come from the Catholic tradition, more the Arab tradition. So that's one of the cases, the veil. So women of Lima, of my city, used to wear veils. They cover their faces and only show one eye. Showing one eye was an act of seduction. This idea of being able to seduce just with one eye, being able to call the attention of men just with the way how you walk. Also, the idea of these veils that sometimes, cover all your silhouette, right? And that, well, you were only able to show, besides the eye, the tiny feet. Diane, thanks for your support, amiga. Gracias. Thank you. So that tiny, tiny feet that the travelers to Peru of those days of the 17th, 18th, even 19th century mentioned, that was so tiny that it was really like impossible that an adult women will have those little shoes, and we have in museums in Peru those shoes which look like shoes of a maybe like 12-year-old daughter, a child. Huh? So it's incredible. So, but they were also very, very petite. So, Caroline, excellent commentary, because also I used to believe that too. When I started to become a tour guide, one of the things that I was very, very much attracted to was, creating tours about the women of Lima, of my city, and women of Peru. And I started to investigate about the veil, right? So why women use veil? We were not Arabs, so it was necessary, of course, I believe, as a way of suppression of the rights of people, as a way to control. But the information I was able to get revolution completely my mind, because I know, number one, and this is well known, that the church opposed completely to the use of the veil. The Catholic Church here of Peru opposed to the use of the veil. So how come, women use veil? Because for us, now that would be a way of control, and not, being able to expose who you are. Actually, if we go in that direction, we will understand why the veil was so important, because it gave these women anonymity and therefore gave them power. Women were not distinguished. You could not know, in that group of women that were out in the street, which one was your wife if you were a man, right? So we know of many cases of women who had lovers, and were able to meet their lovers without being seen, like using the veil. Also, we know that although the tradition, like imposed that the good women, the women of higher status, use the veil, the husband didn't like the wives to use veil. And we know of cases, gracias, Cari, thank you. We know of cases of men who dressed up as women. So we are talking about trans men, right? Um, Using the veil. So we have cases of, let's say, homosexual men in the colonial time dressing up as women with the help of the veil. So at the end, you didn't know if you were talking to a man or a woman sometimes, right? And finally, also, and very important to show you the character of these women, of my ancestors. Many of these women in veils cooperated in the period of the independence with the independentist groups, cooperated as spies, because you will not be able really to identify who was close to you hearing your conversation, right? Like if you were, talking of something secret, or in some other cases, women who infiltrated, in the inner circles of the royalists, and were able to hear commentaries and things that were helpful. And later, yes, exactly, Cari, as incognito, they went to the generals of the independentists and share the information. These were some of the last tapada limeña or covered women of Lima that were photographed in our history. The year 1860 brought, or the decade of the 60s of the 19th century, brought the photography, the cameras to Peru, and that was the time when they were able to be portrayed. And finally, well, the Republica. And why is important to finish with the Republica? Because we are basically the culture that you understand as Peru in this period, thanks to this period, because this is the period of the consolidation. This is the period in which the cultures completely mix. This is the time in which we were not just, Spanish descendants, indigenous descendants, and African descendants. We were mestizo. We were mixed, because now we use the word mestizo to say, or to refer to mix people, to mixed blood people. And here we have a very peculiar image. This is one of my last two images to share today with you, of a beach resort back in the 19th century. Right, so it's a time of the the boom of the guano. Guano is the fertilizer of the seabirds, who was exported and made us very rich. Many people were very, very rich back then. And you can see here, oh, Marlene, thank you so much for coming. Thanks for your beautiful words. Also, here you can see also, well, the ladies, dressed up, of course, very modestly. This is their swimsuits. Look how sexy. What do you think about this sexy swimsuit? And here you have the indigenous women, a little bit more exposed. The indigenous men here, this is a fisherman, right? And the gentleman over here, very, very well dressed, right? Very covered with some tapada limeña, right? And here we have just for laughs, just for a little laughter. We have here some scenes. This is actually belonging to the same scene, which is the way how women in those days used to take a swim. Because we're talking about, of course, the women that were rich, right? Because, the water here is very cold, and you need to be a very good swimmer to get into the water. So this is the time when the fishermen, the indigenous fishermen, work for some sense as floating devices for for those women. So because they were all so heavily dressed, that they needed to be escorted inside the water. These ladies hold very, very tight on those indigenous men, and that's how they could swim. I can imagine. I like to imagine always, those situations in which maybe, no, there were some romances, forbidden romances happening. So it's been really a pleasure to have you today, amigos. Let me turn on the light. And also to say bye to you. Thank you so much for coming today to this event. As always, it's been a pleasure to prepare this slideshow and all of this story commemorating the beautiful women of my country, but commemorating us all, women around the world. We all have had our struggles. Some parts of the world still have struggles. We women in many parts of the world are not able to achieve, the same opportunities. We are not able to decide who we want to marry yet, or we are not able to study, so it's very important that we still fight. We're still in a process. We haven't really achieved it all, right? So these events I am doing for Hago, and especially this one in particular, is a way also to open a little window into the past and be able to understand that, women, we've been struggling for having the opportunities many of us now are having in this moment for long, and to honor those women, to honor those sacrifices. We have to still work because we have more to do, right? And now I'm doing this also because I want my children, my girls, I have three girls, so three responsibilities. I want them to have the best opportunities and to receive, better opportunities that I was able to receive. So anyways, thank you so much, amigos. Gracias. And thanks for your tip support. It really means a lot. It helps me a lot, as you can imagine, but also helps Hago, because as you know, Hago is a free to join platform. It is just supported with tips. So if we want to keep Hago to be tip supported and free to everybody, because education should not be something that looks, education should be, for everybody. Right. So that's something I'm working also a lot in. I want to continue collaborating with Hago in this way. So if you can support Hago with a tip and maybe help me, that would be super. Also, if you would like to help me to continue create events every month consistently, please consider in becoming my sponsor with just $10 per month, or maybe the exchange in your currency. You can help me to create content. Thank you so much to the people who were able to join today that are my sponsors. You mean a lot to me, and you're helping me to create events every month. So it means a lot to me, your support. Muchas gracias. Hope to see you later in another event. Come to my YouTube channel. Gracias, Priscilla. Thank you for your support. You can also donate until the end of this event. I will activate a button if you are new donating. There at the end, you can also click there and you are going to get to know how to donate. And have a lovely rest of the day. Happy Women's Day to you all. Bye bye. Thank you so, so much. And see you soon. Gracias, Priscila. Thank you. Gracias, amigos. Gracias, Silke. Cari, see you soon. Bye bye.